Hi there, this is Justin Krane, certified financial planner professional and founder of Krane Financial Solutions. Welcome to Money, You Got This. Money, right? It's not just about return on investment, it's about return on life. It's about making financial decisions that make you feel like you could have the best life ever.
Krane Financial is an SEC-registered investment advisor. However, such registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and no inference to the contrary should be made. A copy of our current written disclosure statement discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request. Information contained herein is for informational and illustrative purposes only, and general in nature. It should not be considered specific financial planning or investment advice, or a recommendation to buy or sell any type of securities or other investment products.
What is up, everybody? This is Justin Krane, host of the show, Money, You Got This. I am super psyched to have a special guest here today. But before we get started, let me just let you know that this show is brought to you by Krane Financial Solutions. I'm Justin Krane. I'm a certified financial planner professional. Say that 10 times fast. I offer investment management services and act as a fractional CFO to dentists and business owners. I'm the author of the book, Money, You Got This. That's right. It's time to merge your money with your life. You guys ready? Let's do this. I'm psyched you're listening to the show. I want to give you this free report. 3 things multimillionaires do to grow their wealth. Just go to coolmoneyshow.com to grab it. That's coolmoneyshow.com to grab it. Thanks. Okay, so today's guest is Vicki McManus, who is in 3 places at the same time.
Yes.
3 places. Vicki is a business coach, a keynote speaker, an author. She helps entrepreneurs, in particular dentists, build powerful teams and successful businesses. She's been in business a long time. I'm not going to date you or anything like that. And then in the early 2000s, you joined up with Bruce Baird to create the Productive Dentist Academy. We'll talk about that. You also started Neighborhood Smiles. I can't get that's amazing. And I'm just so happy that you're here. I've listened to a lot of your shows, and I'm very happy to have you. Welcome.
Thank you, Justin. I'm glad to know that there's a listener. This is great.
Yeah, no, I'm like just the average guy, like just listening. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'll continue to listen. And then 20, 30 minutes later, I'm like, wait, what am I doing? I was supposed to do something else. I'm too caught up in your good stuff. So I wrote a book and you wrote a book. Right? Frustration. Yeah. Well, give me the title again.
It's Frustration, the Breakfast of Champions. And It's how to take powerful emotions to create career success. Okay,
so let's start with that.
All right.
Why do business owners get so frustrated?
I'm going to speak for me, and I'll just share some experience that, my clients have had. I think that to be an entrepreneur, you have a vision of what life should be and could be. Right. And dentists in particular. And you go through years of education, you've got millions of dollars invested in it. So when things don't happen as fast as you like, then frustration builds. Same with the team gets frustrated because there's this big vision and this thinking, but there's a lack of communication on priority or strategy, process, things like that. So there's a lot of frustrations that can come together. And the key to unwinding it would be communication skills. Well, you can't communicate until you understand your emotions, and so you have to find a way to unpack your emotions, digest around in this internally, then get together with your team, process through it, and then move forward. So the book really shows you how to do that. It's a kind of a first-person thing that everybody can work through. And at the end of the day, it tells you how to get along with difficult bosses, the different personality, leadership types. And ultimately, if you're not a good fit in that environment, how do you make a graceful exit without burning bridges? Because I don't separate work and life. It's all a continuum, right? Yeah. And so there's no reason that you have to get angry and pissed off just to make a change in your life. You can just make a change. So.
We could just talk about your frustrations book the whole time, but there's so many things popping in my head. Number one, everyone has setbacks in life and in business. Mm-hmm. We all have expectations of something going one way and then they don't. For me, in my life, in 2010, I got divorced and it was very, very hard. It was like a death. It was very painful. Mm-hmm. And I've spent the last 9 years working on myself in therapy, working on exactly what you're talking about. Because I'm like the typical guy who doesn't really know what his emotions are and is working to get in touch with what they are and then building off of that. So I can relate to what you're talking about. So I got to imagine when you go into a business owner, in particular a dentist, and you're like, well, what are your emotions and how are you communicating them based on what you thought would happen? You think this dentist is going to like fix it in like 4 seconds. I'm in therapy for 9 years and still working on it. I mean, I'm making progress. I'm much more aware. Like I meditate, I'm intentional. It's good. But like, that's got to be a big shock for someone to like really see what's going on in business.
Yeah. And, I have a fabulous team of coaches. I don't do a lot of one-on-one coaching any longer. So our coaches are trained to listen for those emotions and then just kind of feed them back. Have you noticed what triggers you, and when you get triggered, how do you respond? Would you consider a different way of responding? So they do a wonderful job of helping business owners kind of tackle it, because I think there's as an owner, I want 2 different ROIs from my company. I want the financial return on investment, but I really want the emotional juice. Like, why build something that every day you're going to drive your car there and you're going to get pissed off? Like,
Yeah.
it's one thing to be an employee and you feel like you don't have options. And even I think that a lot of times is BS. I think you choose to stay where you're at and you can choose to move forward into something different. But to intentionally set up a business that doesn't reward you emotionally, it makes no sense to me at all. That should be your sanctuary. That should be your safest place. That's the most creative place if done well.
Yeah, I agree. I use this term. So I do something called financial life planning, which is really merging someone's life with their money and both their business and personal finances together.
Nice.
I like to call it, like, when you talk about your ROI, right, in business, and then the business giving you that emotional like satisfaction. I use this term called ROL, which is return on life.
Oh, can I steal that?
You can steal it. I've stolen it from someone, probably Yoda or someone like, but it really makes you be congruent with not just the money side, but also the life side. So I was listening to one of your interviews and I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm going to ask her about this because I don't know if you're a tennis player or not, but are you a tennis player being in Hawaii? Or do you play any tennis or do you?
No. I heard your story about playing tennis as a kid. So my heart's with you, man.
Thank you.
I have no depth perception. So my parents would put me in all these sports and literally the ball would hit me in the forehead and then I would swing. So volleyball, if Penny Reed is listening to this, I'm still bruised from the volleyball matches we've had. Tennis, baseball, none of it. I have no depth perception. My kids won't even let me sit in the front seat of the car. But amazingly, as a hygienist, I had good hand-eye coordination. But no, to answer your question, I am not. But I am taking up golf again, which is also a very Hawaii thing.
Nice. Okay, so here's what I used to play a ton of tennis. I bet it's the same with golf. But if you line up the top 50 tennis players out there,
yes.
So the top 3 or 4, we have like Nadal, we have like Federer, we have Djokovic, like those are the top 3 or 4, right? And if you look at them versus numbers 5 through 50, right, and you just look at all of their strokes, like their serve, their forehand, backhand, and all of that, I'm going to argue that they all pretty much can hit the same shot. They're all on an isolated shot, can hit a forehand, down the line, cross-court serve, whatever it is. They can do all of that.
Right.
But what the top 4 or 5 have, in my opinion, that separates them from everyone else is the emotional strength, is the inner game, is the mindset where they could take their level up and not have it be peaked, but have it be sustained.
Yes.
And that's what I think your book is about to have a sustained level of that emotional intelligence. I mean, I've listened to 3 or 4 of your interviews and it comes back to that. And if you can get yourself to that level, then all of the little things that you need to do to follow through on a lot of stuff that you teach, I mean, you've got the Productive Dental Academy, right?
Right.
Yeah. A lot of that stuff that your coaches are teaching dentists, if the dentist is in the right frame of mind, in the right mindset,
Right.
with what I'll call prosperity thinking or whatever, they could implement all of the stuff that you're teaching.
Absolutely. And I think you and I have a shared connection also. I was a Tony Robbins trainer
Oh,
from
yeah.
1995 to 2003.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so the mindset, the neurolinguistics, what
Yeah.
you say to yourself, how you
Sure.
visualize the outcome, all of that is important. Keeping a clear mental house is huge. And
Yeah.
quite honestly, I think it's a different, there is an added pressure with dentistry though. And I think our industry, it's very unspoken, but I think our industry as a whole suffers from PTSD. I think we suffer
Yeah.
from undiagnosed PTSD because the stress of creating a replacement body part, a custom design replacement body part for an amputated, diseased piece in the size of a tennis ball in a dark cave to
Yeah.
perfection while smiling
Yeah.
and being nice to the people around you when they hand you the wrong instruments or whatever they do. It's a recipe for disaster unless you find that self-care. I don't think we need a lot of self-improvement in our industry. I think we need a lot of self-care. And female dentists, if you're listening, go get that massage.
Yeah, for sure.
Pamper yourself.
Yeah.
Do the meditations, guys, run, walk, I think that's a big piece. And my non-dental friends like, oh my God, easy peasy. They only work 3 or 4 days a week. Like, it's intense. It's intense what they have to do.
So what do you think the biggest mistake is that dentists are making in their business, if you had to pick one?
Ooh, they outspend their profits. They have.
Did you say outspend?
Yeah, they've got shiny object syndrome and they go to conferences. And I love technology. And in my neighborhood smiles practices, I mean, we got the CBCT, we got the digital everything, we've got HD microscopes, we've got lasers, we've got all that stuff. But we had an acquisition plan. We tested the market. We made sure that there was a need for it. We knew how it was going to cash flow. We knew for every bit of education we went to. I love it when you say every conference you go to, every time you step out the door, you've got to get a 3 times return on that.
Yeah.
So I think that mindset is not there. And so there's a disconnect. And I love being here with you because you get it, right? There's a disconnect between my P&L and my balance sheet and my bank account. And so they see money in the bank, which doesn't match up with the P&L. Like P&L says, I've got 20 grand more. Where did it go? And it's on the balance sheet, and they forget that they're still paying on whatever they bought last year, and that it's like all got to cash flow through. So I think in terms of ownership, that's a big piece of it. But I do think that dentists are very business savvy, especially compared to restaurant owners.
Yeah.
They're not going bankrupt in mass. So I think they do a lot of great things, and a little more education financially would set a lot of things right.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on the profit thing. I think it's super important. I even bring in the statement of cash flows, which trues up everything like real quick.
Yeah.
Like they can see exactly where their money is going, and, the debt pay downs, or, the owner contributions or the owner withdrawals, all of that stuff. It really makes it really, really clear on whether the dentist has a lifestyle business or
Right.
he's really using it to create net worth for himself
Right.
or herself.
Ooh, will you come on our show on everyday practices, and let's talk about that one topic? What's the difference between lifestyle, cash flow, and building true net worth?
Yes.
Because I really think all dentists are cut from one of those two cloths. And I'll share with you my statistic. I actually did a lifestyle study on who's attracted to what. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
And you know what I love about dentists? They're like, passive income. Everything's passive income. Like, I'm going to go buy a building and it's going to be fully furnished. All tenants are in there, and I'm going to just make like 50 grand a month. Like, it's going to be no work.
Right.
It usually, not to say that real estate isn't good, because it is, but dentists have this vision of being able to go to Hawaii, where you're living.
Right.
And make a killing and not have to deal with their employees and their staff and scheduling and blah, blah, blah. And it takes work. It really, really takes work, whether it's any real
Yeah.
estate or investing or whatever. It's
Well,
not,
I see that in the DSO craze right now. And you see
yeah.
dental entrepreneurship as a search term is really on the rise. And so is DSO. And
Mhm.
it's really interesting to me the number of dentists under the age of 40 that are really getting their clinical stride. And now they're wanting 2 and 5 and 10 and 20 and 50 practices. And I think that's great. I think it's great. But I think you got to have your first house in order before you get the second and the
Yeah.
third and the fourth. And I think it's a small part of the market, but I do see a few dentists thinking that that's a lot easier than it really is. And that's why I did my experiment and bought 5 practices simultaneously in the state of Wisconsin, which was about 2,000 miles from my house.
I was going to ask you about that. All right. So I want to come back
Crazy.
okay. So note to Justin, what do dentists need to do to get their financial house in order? We'll get to that, but I
Sure.
want to go to this. So you're running Productive Dentist Academy. You
Yes.
started Neighborhood Smiles where you bought like 4 or 5 practices.
Yes.
You're living in Hawaii and you're running, I think, one other company, or am I missing one?
Well, Productive Dentist Academy has an ad agency.
Okay.
So we have an ad agency and we have a business consulting firm. So those were rapidly growing.
How are you doing all of that? Like, how do you manage that?
Well, it was stressful. I was actually, and I do live also north of Seattle. So I do live on mainland a lot of the time. And so it was in 2011. The economy was starting to recover, but dentistry was not. I really enjoyed the process. I had a young dentist who had ambition to have a group, but knew that he needed a bit more time to season on the business acumen. And I had a group of bankers that financed me and said, yeah, whatever you want to do, let's do it. So went off with a $10 million line of credit, bought a few practices, and I thought, well, this is going to be easy. It was the hardest thing I think I have ever done. One, because I'm not a dentist. And so getting clinical standardization, amongst the doctors was difficult, even with a dentist who was a partner. And long distance oversight, I think, is really difficult to really steer and engage a culture the way you might ideally want to. So for those 2 reasons, I was glad that it was a planned entrance and it was a planned exit. So I got in, we did what we did, and then he bought me out over time. So got in, learned a lot, made some money, bought a house, spent more time in Hawaii. So I'm minimizing the full effect of that, but on the mental game, on the physical health game, it's one of the toughest 7 years of my life was walking into that arena.
How did you get through it?
Wow, you're gonna have me go into this deep place.
Well,
I was not gonna go.
When you said toughest 7 years, I'm like, that's 2,000 days.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Well, you know what? Because I am very transparent with my audiences. When I say tough days, I've been widowed twice. I've been divorced. I've had a lot of things to deal with, and this was still yet some of the toughest times because it was sustained for so long.
Yeah.
And so there's the gap between what I want to do and what I can do, but there's also the legal pressures of it. We also happily, the Botox laws were changing. We love Botox, got into Botox, and a 78-year-old associate dentist clipped out one of our ads from the newspaper that said, do you have migraine headaches, or come and explore options for your TMJ therapy here. Botox is one of them. So we were advertising very generically an evening, sent it to the board and said, don't you think this is illegal to advertise Botox this way? So we got to stand as the first test case of the new ruling. So legal things would pop up, things like that. 2 coworkers who sat side by side for 5 years prior to me buying the practice. Suddenly one of them felt very harassed, had her husband come in and said, we're going to sue you for a harassing workplace. And I'm like, we're not harassing anybody. That's like her best friend, and they fight all the time. So things like that were issues that I uncovered that I went, wow, the stress of being the practitioner dentist and having to deal with these kind of things is tremendous. So I think it made my consulting firm a better consulting firm. It made the way we advertise for a dentist. We really double check State Practice Act's 9 Ways to Sunday. So it made us better because of it. But personally, the travel, going back and forth, things like that, I ended up with Hashimoto's thyroid. Blew out my thyroid gland, blew out my adrenals because of that. Then there was a whole cascade of things, rheumatoid arthritis, the mental, the mind never shut off, right? Because you got too many balls in the air. And so I went to the Amen clinics and discovered that the exact brain pattern, the way you fire off for leadership, strong leaders, that pattern is also the pattern for PTSD. And so if it's stuck on, what is a good thing becomes too much of a good thing. Yeah. And so that was like, wow. So when you talk about return on lifestyle and I talk about lifestyle, it's coming from this place of knowing. It's not, yes, everything's possible. I believe that. I believe the impossible is possible, but what is the cost? And how do you get really clear on what do you want? So anyway, that's going down a rabbit hole, but
I think it's good though. I think what you're talking about is good for business owners, in particular dentists, to hear, because a lot of them that I'm working with, they're at I don't know if you know who Dan Sullivan is from Strategic Coach. He calls it this ceiling of complexity, where they're at this level of, I don't know, let's just say $2 million, and they can't get past it for whatever reason. And they're like, oh, maybe I need another operatory, or maybe I need to go buy someone, or, whatever. And I heard you talk about something really interesting, and it had to do a little bit with marketing, but also just on I think focus is the fact that a business at some point reaches this inflection point and it can't really go through it, and something's got to give, maybe a reframe. So what would you say to someone who's feeling like they're just making the same money and they're trying to work harder, but they can't quite figure out why they can't add an extra zero to the bank account bottom line or the balance sheet or whatever?
Wow, that's a big one. For me, what I've discovered, it really isn't about working harder. It never is about working harder. In fact, the more relaxed you are, the better everything soars. Because when you're relaxed and you bring your creativity and you bring your best, and it gives permission for everybody around you to bring their creativity and their best. If we're talking dentistry specifically, we have a scheduling technique that really takes the pressure off of everything. And I don't know of very many others that really teach it this way, but we actually slow dentists down to make them more productive. So the average dentist will produce $400 an hour. Our average doctor produces well over $900 to $1,000 an hour, and they are working less. They're working more strategically. And so what we do is we say, and it's a real simple form. It's like one of those picture puzzles. You don't see it till you see it. But if you want to produce $800 an hour, you only schedule $800 an hour procedures.
Sure.
And then immediately dentists go, but what about all the composites, and what about the insurance, and what about, that's all, there's a way to get it all in. But so I think first step is you have to really slow down, get clear on what it is you want to do, and then make sure that you have your team engaged to work with you to engage on that vision. So I think sometimes we're sending out an unclear signal. Yeah.
So let's bring it down to more practical. So if a dentist can make that $800 or whatever the number is on a crown, right? You can make much more on a crown than you can on a filling. That means that somehow he or she needs to market themselves or position themselves or get them in the right place to just bring in more crown work, right?
Nope.
No?
Nope. You could do it. We had, I think one of the coolest success stories for PDA was an alumni. We had some great alumni. So Ryan Swain, who started 6 Month Smiles, he came through and he goes, I hate general dentistry. I really just want to do adult cosmetic ortho. And He did. We helped him like totally gear onto that, and he did that. But most doctors are bread and butter, bread and butter. But what I'm saying is, let's say you want to do $500 an hour. That's really easy.
Mhm.
And your crown is $1,000. I would give you 2 hours to do that crown, which
Mhm.
totally blows a doctor's mind, because in theory they can do it in 40 minutes,
Mhm.
right? But if I try to do it fast, then you have to diagnose 3 times more than you expect to schedule in any given time. I've run that formula for 30
Yeah.
years. I don't care about 100% treatment acceptance and
Yeah.
all this nonsense that's out there. There's a 3-to-1 for
Yeah.
getting it on the books.
Mhm.
So now if I can do a crown in an hour and I've got 8 hours, now I have to diagnose 8, 16, 24 crowns, and I have to do that every single day. But if I give myself 2 hours to do that crown, now I need 4 of those.
Yeah.
So now I need 12.
Mhm.
So it really, the marketing, the diagnostics, the scheduling all go hand in hand. And once you template it, if I'm going from 400 to 500, and I'm like you, I like to take baby steps. I like predictable success. So let's go from 400 to 450 to 500 to 550 to
Yeah.
600, not go from 400 to 700. It's too big a leap.
But I get that. But my question is if a doctor wants to break through,
Right.
don't they have to think about something that is, and owning and honoring that time space that you're talking about, don't they have to think about a way to be as profitable as possible so that they could actually make a living and grow?
Yeah. So the way we do that is and there's a lot of different ways to set goals. You can literally, I've seen people take out a dartboard and just throw it up there, or they read dental economics and they go, well, the average guy does this, so I want to do 20% more. We get real. So we start with your personal overhead. What's it cost to pay for your house, your college, the kids, the vacations, keep the spouse happy, all of that. What's your personal debt? What's the business debt? How are we paying all that off? What's our day-to-day expenses? And we roll it all up. We've got this really cool spreadsheet, rolls it up into the profitability incentive point. And it makes sure that the doctor is compensated not only as a producing dentist in their practice, but also as a return on investment for owning it and taking
For sure.
it, right? And so I see these BAM formulas and all this where it's, salary times 5. It doesn't work. You're always underwater with a made-up formula. So we take real numbers and we'll identify a gap. It's usually $28,000 a month when we start with a doctor. There's usually my dream lifestyle and where I'm at today. There's a gap, 20, 25, 30,000, something in that range. And so we break it down to this hourly piece and say, hey, could you do $50 an hour more? Well, yeah, I could do that in my sleep. Well, that's another $76,000 a year. Could you do 100? That's another. There's very few problems. Maybe you have a different number. There's not a lot of problems that an extra 150 grand doesn't fix.
But I think you're starting at first of all, I start at the same place. I always start on the personal side because the business has to fund the personal goals.
Right.
The personal money doesn't always have to fund the business, because then your life is working to serve the business.
It's like a backwards flow.
It's never.
Yeah.
So, I know that when I start working with clients, they have no idea what their monthly nut is, or they think they do.
No, they don't know.
Completely like forget it. So that I love, and I love the fact that you're working where once we figure out what that number is, we can back into what cash flow the business needs to produce to allow the doctor to get ahead personally. That's amazing. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then we also have their CPAs load their budget into QuickBooks. So now they're looking at budget versus actual every month, and they can look at their spending variance. And I will say that we are GPO, we're a group purchasing organization, so we can help our doctors get great savings on supplies and things like that. We'll cut it 15, 20, 25%.
That's huge.
Which is great. It is huge.
It's not just one time, it's every year.
It's every year.
That's huge.
So it's like 20 grand a year. But I would rather them work on growing $50 an hour
Yeah.
than to worry about the price of cotton rolls.
Yeah.
Because if I can save you 23%
Yeah.
on a 5% line item in your budget,
Whatever.
it's like whatever.
Yeah.
So I kind of have that both perspective. I'm more the macro, let's move this in the right direction, because the most profitable procedure is that procedure after you hit your break even.
Exactly. Because it all,
Right.
I just said that today to a client. That's so funny you're talking about that.
Yeah, like what time of day do you want to be profitable? Is it going to be at noon or is it going to be at 5 o'clock?
I love it. Can we just drink wine and talk dentist and money numbers all day long? I don't know if but I love the coffee in Kona. Like, it's really good out there.
We roast our own coffee. It's awesome.
Oh, jealous. I want to ask you something having to do with these metrics that you're talking about, because you talked about it, about this new economy with respect to discounting and how everyone was just used to paying one rate. But now with the advent of the internet and pricing and people shopping, I'm curious what your view is on discounting and whether it makes sense for a business owner and in particular a dentist.
You know, and you probably saw this too, like when the economy truly crashed in December 2008, right before we went into the 2009, when North Face jackets went from $300 to $49, I think the retail bubble got burst and people saw what they really should be paying. And now phony markups just tick me off. You know, an $8 scarf in Times Square, Chinatown should not be $82 and then discounted to $40. So I hate phony baloney retail jacking with prices. Where I do think discounting really serves dentistry well is when you want to run a more fee-for-service model, right? And so if I look at insurances, they're taking 20-30% off the top, which is really tough. It's really, and not only are they taking it off the top, you also lose the time value of money because they're holding up your money for 30 to 60 days. So that's probably the most brutal discounting that we have. So anything that beats that is a good day. So that's my simplistic point of view. I have found 5% bookkeeping courtesies don't really motivate a lot. They're appreciated and patients go, oh, thank you. But more than the courtesy, so some of our larger offices that are doing same-day smiles or full mouth rehabs, things like that, they will do up to 10% prepay cash courtesies. That can be significant. I find that to work really well. But I don't think it's the discounting. I think it's cash flowing. I think it's patients being able to make payment over time. And I don't know if you've interviewed anybody from Compassionate Finance. Have you talked to them?
No.
Ooh, that's a good one to talk to.
Okay.
Because basically the doctor, once you cover your overhead, right? So let's say it's a $5,000 procedure, your lab cost, your hard cost, all of that's $1,500. You can use the insurance to cover that part or get a $1,500 down payment. Now you finance the $3,500 and you put it out over 60 months and you charge 18.99%. Now, when you talk about wealth creation, you've got truth in lending documents, you're creating seasoned paper, which is far different than AR. I think that was one of my biggest frustrations in ownership was team not collecting the copays up front. And then when the insurance did pay, they didn't want to call the patient and bug them for $20 or $100. So then it just aged and aged and aged. So through Compassionate Finance, you can get the larger cases. You can give a payment of $125 a month.
Yeah.
And then you've got to have back-end ways for any of those insurance payments to get quickly collected. There's another program called Abella that will go out and text message. And they have like, when they beta tested this, I want to say that they went back and took on accounts receivables over 90 days old in some pretty large chunks. And they were able to recover 40% of that in the first 32 days. Wow. So it's huge. So I think it's a payment issue more than it is a discounting issue. People want to know they've got good value.
Well, I think really also what you're saying is it's a timing of cash flows issue where if the doctor can get paid or any business owner can get paid most of it up front to cover their hard costs, overhead, whatever. Right. On the back end, it's more profit. And if you could overlay a percentage on that, financing it and make that great, as long as your collections are good. I mean, it's very, very simple.
You're making money on time. And the average dentist has 23% open time. And I think if we change their schedule, you'd see that they're probably 50% open time. So all you're doing is you're financing your open time. We've got a client that has over $1 million change and he finances 2 cases a month. You know, so you don't have to go and like change your whole business model. You're just looking for, I think it's just individualized. You're like, what helps Justin move forward with his dentistry today? Is it a discount? Is it financing? Is it, I think that's where the economy is you need to customize this to me.
Yeah. Well, that actually leads me into the last part of what I wanted to talk about today, which is marketing. You've talked a lot about marketing. You've talked about relationship marketing, nurturing the patients, just acting like a person on social media rather than a business. I mean, I've really watched what you said, and I think my audience needs to hear from you about that. So let's start with relationship marketing. What does that mean to you?
All right. So first of all, we define relationship as agreed upon course of action, right? So in your case, in my case, when we got divorced, there was somebody was not agreeing to how we were moving forward. So you move in a different, so at its basis, relationship is agreed upon course of action. So I think sometimes we get stuck in rapport. You have to have rapport. I like you, you like me, the body language is all lining up, all of that stuff is good. But once I have rapport, then we need to get into relationship. And if you got trouble with no shows or cancellation in your practice, it's because of a relationship issue. You know, I didn't look at you in the eye and say, hey, Justin, by the way, I work by appointment only. And if you don't come, then I have open time that another patient could have. So can I count on you to keep your appointments? And you train your patients to be in relationship with you. You also can extend that relationship to referrals. You know, Justin, and this is marketing, right? They only know what you share. So Justin, did you know that more than half of our patients, in fact, 60-70% of our patients come from referrals from great people like you? So my job is to earn your trust so that you'll find friends and family members that could use this as well. It's one of the highest compliments, and we thank you for that. So it's just having the courage to extend the invitation. That's what I call relationship marketing, is extend the invitation and then take great care of people. If they have an 8 o'clock appointment, make sure they're in the chair at 7:59, right? It's paying attention. Time is an emotion, and I don't think people get that. So if you can honor the time, you've really set a good tempo.
Yeah.
And if I had one metric that I could put to your market, and this is internal marketing, I would say that, because you're a numbers guy, right? Look at the number of hygiene visits come through every month. Just run a standard report. I don't care why they sat in your hygienist chair, but let's say there's 200 patients that come in her chair. You should have at least 20 referrals.
10%.
10%. And then you want to, for outstanding customer service, you'll see that tipping up like 15, 17, 18, 20%. So that's like the one number I look at when I go into office, because that tells me that customer service is high, team is happy, and we're actively asking and extending those relationships.
Okay, so you talked about this, but it's right in with what you're talking about. So if we want to get that number to, let's say, 15%, and it's currently at 10%,
right?
You talked about that the average dentist is spending about 1% of their sales on marketing, right?
Yeah.
And you want to get it to about 8%. So if they made an investment in customer service, whatever that might mean for the experience of the patient, or any business owner investing in customer service, would you categorize that as actually marketing?
Yes. So in that 8% that Bruce and I talk about, probably about 3% of that is team training in world-class customer service. Because why would you spend $1? I mean, we have dentists with huge ad budgets. We've got some dentists that are spending anywhere from $4,000 a month to $20,000 a month. But we don't spend a dime if they don't have world-class customer service ready to greet them on the phone, convert that caller into a patient, have that patient become a raving fan. If you're not on the cycle of raving fan and walking the customer experience, don't waste your money.
Yeah. It's
Advertising can't fix relationship.
I actually, because I when I work with my clients on their P&Ls, I'll move a lot more stuff into marketing that they might not think is marketing. But I'm like, sorry, that's marketing. That's an investment that you're making that needs to have a return on it, which is a whole nother, like, I believe marketing, you have to think of marketing as an investment. I know it's an expense on a P&L, but we want the money to come back and then some. And anything where we're making an investment in our business,
Right.
I think could be viewed as a marketing investment. In this case, with what you're talking about, Vicki, the customer service experience, great. If you're spending 20 grand a month on PPC, but you're not training your front office person to convert them, sorry, you're done.
You know what? I'll give you, you asked me before mistakes that dentists make. I'll give you my pet peeve, and I'll give you some of the easiest training tip ever. So the easiest training tip ever for customer service is, if you have message on hold, play it during a staff meeting and say, do we do everything that our message on hold says that we do?
Oh, yeah.
You know, you will be greeted warmly by a smiling face at the front desk. And here we love this and we love that. You know, like the lady on the, she's great.
Yeah.
Like, can you live up to that? So that's a great, cheap, easy, do it tomorrow training tip. Do we live up to our own hype? And then one of my biggest pet peeves is that, savvy marketers, I'm going to be very kind with my words here, savvy marketers market to dentists in a very engineering way because they know they're marketing to engineers. And so they call or they email and they say, the load speed on your website is slow and the SEO, we've done a search and your SEO is down or this or that. And so they're using these engineering pieces that don't mean jack diddly squat in and of themselves. Like, our loading speeds they're smoking hot. I'll put them against anybody's, but that's not a reason to go with a web company, right? It's, do they get my brand? Do they extend my message from my brick and mortar practice? Can they extend my message into cyberspace in a way that best represents me, that represents my culture, that is easy to understand, that allows people to connect? Because that's what people are looking for, is connection. And yes, it's got to be optimized. Yes, you've got to advertise. Yes, you've got to do all that. But doing it from a boilerplate template. And so I think that's a pet peeve, is that dentists don't understand how to really gauge the value of working with a marketing company. That's why we built what we built, and we don't advertise for our marketing group. You have to almost know somebody who knows somebody to get to us, because I don't want to be in competition with the generic marketing companies out there. Do, a really great job.
I think you're on to something, and I think you have a lot of low-hanging fruit. Work with you guys.
You know, we have a lot of fun. At the end of the day, we have a lot of fun.
Well, it has been such a pleasure to have you on. I'm really fortunate and lucky to have you on. Where can people go to find out more about you? Where do you want people to go?
They can go to productivedentist.com if they're looking for, marketing, consulting, things like that. I do have a VickiMcManus.com site. We don't keep that one up as much, but you can email me directly, Vicki, Vicki, at productivedentist.com, and I'll get back with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on. It's been great to have you.
Thank you, Justin.
Have a question? Want to get in touch with us? Need some help and advice with your finances? Just go to coolmoneyshow.com and reach out to us. That's coolmoneyshow.com.
Krane Financial Solutions is an SEC-registered investment advisor. However, such registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and no inference to the contrary should be made. A copy of our current written disclosure statement discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request. Information contained herein is for informational and illustrative purposes only and general in nature. It should not be considered specific financial planning or investment advice, or a recommendation to buy or sell any type of securities or other investment products. No investment decision should be made based solely on any information provided herein. We do not provide legal, accounting, or tax services. We recommend that all investors seek out the services of competent professionals in any of the aforementioned areas. Certain information provided has been obtained from third-party sources that we believe reliable. However, it's not been independently verified and is not guaranteed.